finale. That's all I have for this intro.
Yep, that's me.
But, hello beautiful bookish people. My name is Hannah and today we're going to make a pie. While I tell you about the 4 books that Cindy has gotten me to read. Now, this video was not planned. I did not have a secret TBR. I just genuinely watched Cindy's videos and she influenced me enough to read 4 books. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Are her reviews legit? Can we trust with Cindy? And we're also going to be continuing the segment, Cooking with Hannah. This is very much inspired by Cindy's videos. That's why we're cooking. We're just copying her left and right. If you don't know who Cindy is, where have you been for the past like 2 years where she's been dominating? But obviously her links will be down in the description. She's an amazing booktuber and I would be very surprised if you haven't heard of her. But to make a long story short, a little too late, we're going to be making a chocolate pie while talking to you about very sad memoirs, a fantasy book, and horror. So let's just get started. But the first book I would like to talk to you about is An Enchantment of Raven. But we're gonna put in our sugar, just like that sweet, sweet romance. Enchantment of Ravens is basically about this painter named Isabel. I'm getting messages, RIP that. And she is very well known for her craft of painting. So the prince of the fairy court comes to visit her and they kind of have this instant sort of attraction to each other. They're getting along, they're flirting. Isabel is like, oh my gosh, maybe fairies aren't that bad. And then boom, the painting is done and there's trouble in paradise because fairies are not supposed to show emotions too. Which is bad because Isabel has painted 3 emotions into the painting. So along comes this quest, we have to go to trial, there's fairy wars, and spoiler alert, I loved it. Mix, 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 mix your booty. But I was actually surprised upon finishing this novel that there's like quite the discourse of like people either loving it or hating it, which kind of surprised me because I had a grand old time with it. And the most common critique I would say this book has is its insta-love, and I would just like to debate team you for a second because I highly disagree with the insta-love remarks. Isabel and her fairy little prince have a very like angsty sort of instant attraction to each other. And then about 150 pages in, there's this moment with Isabel when she's kind of realizing she's taken prisoner by the fairy prince. And she has this sort of commentary about like, if I had known that what this fairy would have done to me, I would have never have thought about him or fantasized in that way. So it's kind of like this discussion about how when you meet somebody, you can kind of have that instant fantasy about spending the rest of your life with somebody, which is relatable. So, you know, like when you go to a college class and you see someone and you're like, wow, you're attractive, what if we got married? It's the same thing with Enchantment of Ravens. So I was so surprised that people thought it was insta-love, because I think you could make the argument that it's way more instant fantasy, instant romanticization of another person than it is insta-love. I don't think you need world building for everything. Personally, if we are telling the story of 2 people who are falling in love, we don't need to visit every court in the world. It's a very small scale story of people liking each other. So do I need to know the political intrigue of like the Autumn Court? No! I don't. If you are mad about the world building in Enchantment of Ravens, go read City of Brass. Do your high fantasy thing, but don't come for my little raven prince, okay? Or am I subtweeting someone? Possibly. You can figure out who. Sorry, we had to take an off-camera moment to melt the butter, but if it wasn't clear from my love for Enchantment of Ravens. I highly recommend it and I loved it. So, thank you, Hannah, for adding that applause effect. So, what was that? Oh my gosh, what was that? Are you in a reading slump? Are you tired of reading new releases? Do you need something to transport you back to the good old days of 2011? Well, I have the solution for you. The complete paperback collection of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. That's right, if you haven't felt old in a while, these books are turning 10 this year. And to celebrate, we're doing a giveaway. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children made me want to become a photographer. It made me fall in love with whales. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children is the first book series I ever loved. It taught me about love, loss, and one day you might be in a love triangle with your grandfather. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children combines the found family trope with supernatural abilities to make the perfect young adult formula. It's got bowler hats, sea voyages, and characters dealing with complex emotions such as grief. Side effects may include making you want to contact your grandparents to make sure they haven't been captured by a monster. I don't know what to say, so bye. Now back to regularly scheduled programming. So the next book that Cindy influenced me to read was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Oh, get it, get it, get it. Oh my gosh, why is it stressful? Don't worry about it. Don't think about it too hard. XO baby. Which I have talked about a couple times on this channel. Get it, okay? One. Get it! Okay. Now we gotta wash your hands, okay? Wash hands break. I am here to tell you once again, this is like your reminder of the day to read Know My Name by Chanel Miller. It is simultaneously the most hopeful yet heartbreaking memoir I think I have ever read. It tells the story of Chanel Miller, who was sexually assaulted in California, and kind of her case behind the scenes about the court system. And aside from the initial assault, I think the most heartbreaking thing about this novel is actually the court system, because it really gives you a behind the scene of how kind of messed up it is. Like, you cannot do anything if you were in like a big case like this. It talks about how Chanel had to quit her job because she never knew when a court case or when the court was finally gonna get her trial going. So like, organizing a work schedule around something that is unknown is impossible. It talks about like the effects on her family and kind of how easy it is in our like modern age to disguise trauma, because she told very few people. And like, there's this really beautiful passage that I think about a lot, and it says she like posted something to Instagram right before the trial, and everyone was like, oh, that's such a cute picture, without knowing what Chanel was going through. And it's just so beautiful. I don't know how else to explain it to you. Chanel puts like emotions into such beautiful sentences that you can like feel it in the word. It's like probably gonna be in the favorite books by the end of the year, and I would not have read it if it wasn't for Cindy constantly praising it. So thanks, bro. You're a good one. So moving on from one heartbreaking memoir to another heartbreaking memoir, we are going to be talking about Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody by Lori, which talks about kind of the behind the scenes of a therapist's life. It talks about how therapists are people too, and they are going through struggles. So it is a memoir about how Lori was going through a breakup, and when this breakup occurred, like, Lori had never pictured her life with anyone else in the future. And so there was this abrupt breakup, and it shows how like the mind is kind of like this fragile Jenga puzzle, and like removing one piece can really just take a mental toll on you. And so as a therapist, she goes to see another therapist. So it's like tells a story of a therapist and her therapist and the patients in between. So it gives you like this really unique look at, as a therapist, it's kind of can be frustrating when patients are kind of hiding the truth from you, or they don't want to reveal everything to you when you are trying to give them a diagnosis. But then it also shows the flip side and parallels it with sometimes people aren't ready to divulge that information because maybe they haven't processed it yet. So Lori, who initially went to therapy to get over this breakup, actually comes to the conclusion that she has a lot of grief that she needs to process. And it talks about why people go to therapy, why it's helpful, like the different types of patients. There are patients that go to therapy for a certain type of issue, and then there are patients who just need to be in therapy constantly, and then there are the people who don't go to therapy at all, even though they probably should. I think it has a really good discussion about how therapy is necessary because we as individuals can kind of idealize ourselves, so we need that outside observer to be like, no, you're not well. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the story because they don't see like an overarching plot line. But my argument to that is like, that's kind of like life. Are there major themes in everyday life? No. Is there narrative structure to life? No. This is a memoir. You get as much out of a book as you put into it. Not everything has a point. Not everything has a reason. But sometimes you just like need to take a break and talk to somebody, and I think this book does a beautiful job with that. But anywho, we have to do 5 ounces of condensed milk, and this is 14, so we're gonna eyeball it because cooking is not a science. No. It's all about how you feel and intuition. Oh, why is that gross? Ew. Why is that disgusting? Ew, I hate it. I hate it a lot. I don't know what I was thinking condensed milk would be, but not that. So now we're just gonna put it into our pie crust. Okay guys, are you ready? I know I am. Oh my gosh, this is so satisfying. That's why we're whispering. So it's ASMR. Get that condensed milk out of here. But a pie takes a long time to cook, so I will see you in an hour. But for you, it will probably be like 5 seconds so we can talk about our last book. So, transition. All right. After an hour-long break, we are back. Are you ready to see the final product? Wow, a pie. Is it beautiful? No. Is it gonna taste great? Yes. And that's the true nature of a pie. But the last book that I read because of Cindy was actually Mexican Gothic. I'm actually gonna cut this bad boy and we can have a little taste test. Here we go, first bite. Hannah, you already noted. Cue the drum roll. It's so warm. I love pie. You know what I love almost as much as this pie? Mexican Gothic. Transition. So Mexican Gothic is about this 24-year-old named Noemi. It's set in the 1950s when Noemi receives a letter from her distant cousin about her marrying a suspicious white man. So Naomi is tasked with the task. It's fine. Of going to visit her cousin and seeing what is up, because if she does, she will be able to go into a master's program. And so it's very eerie. There's a haunted house. Things are suspicious. And there are mushrooms? Question mark? What I want to tell you about this book is it is Gothic horror. So don't go into it expecting to have some Heathcliff gravedigger romance plot. There is a questionable romance, but that is not the focus. It's very much like a horror novel. And what this author does really well is kind of use the horror tropes to talk about colonialism. But I would describe this book as historical Get Out meets Beetlejuice. Now hear me out. Hear me out. Towards the end of the novel, I'm going to say things out of context so it's not spoilers. There is a moment that embodied the song Creepy Old Guys from Beetlejuice.
I really love creepy old guys.
But anywho, I could not stop thinking about that song while reading Mexican Gothic, and in fact, I think it enhances your reading experience. So I would just like to divulge that information. But on that note, I don't really have much to say. The thesis of this video, does Cindy have taste? And spoiler alert, yes. There you go. Pie is good. Gothic horror is good. And I love fairies. That's what we've learned. Thank you for coming to my class and my debate session. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Keep reading and all that jazz. Are the reviews? Why am I out of breath? Wait, hold on. Stop. Back it up. Hold on a second. Now back to regularly. What? Ew. Butter is the seasoning of cooking. We're gonna do a thumbnail while we wait, so Hannah in the future doesn't panic. Surprisingly, walnuts are more dangerous to dogs than chocolate. The things you learn in Girl Scouts. But